Let's get started. This is a webinar about Geospatial Energy Mapper. It's a public web-based mapping tool designed for energy planning. I'm Jim Kuiper from Argonne National Laboratory, and during this webinar, we'll be recording it, so be advised that if you use the chat or if you unmute or use your camera, then that would be captured in the recording. And I would like to just welcome you to ask any questions using the chat or unmute, as long as we can have a good meeting and there aren't any disruptions. That I want to make it a friendly conversation. And if there's something you see that you have a question about, there's plenty of time, I think, in this hour to ask questions as we go, and I want to welcome that. This tool is sponsored by the Department of Energy Office of Electricity. It was under the Grid Deployment Office fairly recently, and there was a reorganization. So we're under the Office of Electricity right now. And originally, we at the beginning of the project, we were there also. So it's kind of full circle that we're in the Office of Electricity right now with our sponsor. The main audience is really intended for energy planners, whether they be operating the grid or regulating or researching energy topics, or maybe an NGO with a certain goal or position that they want to advocate for or support. Anyone really that has an interest in energy planning. It has broad data capabilities, a large data library. You can visualize any of that on the map at any scale and look at features, look them up on the map. I'll be demonstrating that as well as many other capabilities today. It has a modeling capability for, I like to say it's for physical siting of energy infrastructure. So the modeling doesn't really get at some things we have frequent questions about, such as the capacity of the grid in that location, economics, and some of those aspects of project planning. What it's strong for is physical siting. So factors like proximity to infrastructure or population density or protected areas, lots of different features come into play when you're planning an energy project and have a large influence on its eventual success. So the intention here is to provide as much data as possible to help in those decisions, and a modeling capability that helps you identify areas on the map that fit a set of criteria that fit your project. It's also very helpful for analyzing projects from a environmental compliance or other regulatory requirement. There's a lot of data in here that helps support those analyses. We've added a reporting capability so that you can take an area that you're interested in, and you sketch it on the map or load it from a GIS file and generate reports about a whole variety of topics. And we're actively adding reports and adding sections to reports. We also, since our last demonstration, added a corridor routing capability, which generates a corridor between 2 points based on a suitability surface about what the various criteria as you cross the landscape that come into play, either positively or negatively influencing that location for being a good location. I'll also demonstrate that today. A quick way to start in GEM is to use the mapping themes, and they appear at the lower left of the interface. And here are 3 quick examples of the map that displays when you choose one of these themes. It loads your table of contents with a set of data selected from the catalog on that topic. And there may be more data in the catalog for certain less commonly used layers that fit that topic. So it's not a comprehensive list necessarily, but it highlights the layers that we think would be most of interest for that particular theme. If you click at the upper left, there is a layer catalog that you can access. And right now, for CONUS, the contiguous U.S. lower 48 states, we have 229 mapping layers and 100 model input layers, which I'll be talking about later. So these toggles at the top, layer, model input, and model output, get at different elements of the tool that'll be more obvious as we talk further. You can filter by keyword or by category. You can click on the headers to sort columns, and any layer that you click on will present a panel on the right with including buttons to access the metadata at the bottom here and then download it. Checking the box adds it to the table of contents in the map and allows you to select the data that you want to work with. Next section in the tool list there is to find suitability models, or find suitable areas, and that is the modeling capability for a whole variety of technologies. We have a default model configured for just about every technology that's used to generate electricity, and some other types of energy infrastructure, such as electric vehicle charging station models. And that dialog at the top left gives you a general sense of how it works. You take a whole set of criteria. Those titled names there are the input modeling layers. Each one has a set of values from 0 to 100 for suitability, where 100 is highly suitable and 0 is unsuitable. And you can adjust those. And you can also use weights on the left there to set the relative importance of the layers. And then the system will compute a composite value for all those inputs and generate a map for you. I'll be showing you some examples of that today. For the report topics, and I think 11 is out of date, I need to update that. We've added several models very recently, reports very recently. The idea here is kind of the opposite of the modeling, where the modeling is trying to help you find areas or prospect for areas that fit a certain set of criteria. Here you can take an area you're already interested in and learn as much as you can about it. And so at the lower left there, you can see there's the footprint sketched on the map. You can then choose a report topic and launch it. And at the right there are some examples of the output that's generated for these particular reports. Yeah, so I'm going to spend most of the time demonstrating the tool, and the URL to reach it is there. It's a public tool, so you can launch it once you get to the website. And actually, that should be HTTPS. It's the typo. We have training videos that we're regularly adding new topics on a YouTube channel, so there's a link for that there. And if you have any questions, you can reach us at gem@anl.gov. And how the system works, or if you encounter a bug, we really would appreciate any feedback that you have about the tool and how we can help you analyze your projects, or if there's a data set that you're aware of that you think would really fit the scope of this tool and be useful. All those are valuable suggestions. Why don't I pause here, and before I launch into the demo, are there any questions about what I've covered or discussed, or is there any particular interest you have that you'd like me to talk about during the presentation? Feel free to enter something in the chat or ask a question. And let me get my ideas list up here. All right. So when you start GEM, you start with a blank map, and you can go to the catalog and start picking things, but these mapping themes are intended to quickly get you started. So as an example, if we click electrical infrastructure, what happens there is it populates this legend on the right, and here I can control what appears on the map, and then obviously the map itself. So there's buttons on the map here to zoom in or out. I like to use the mouse wheel to scroll. It's a little bit more convenient. So you can do that. If you click on a feature, it will look up information about it. So in this case, that happens to be a transmission line with 100 kV, or at least it's a small line, 69 kV. You can learn some other things about it. And really any of the layers in the map will have some sort of information tied to them that you can look up that way. Every layer can be toggled on and off with this icon here. You can adjust the transparency, so you can adjust the relative importance of different layers on the map so they're more noticeable. Sometimes the layer will obscure things underneath it. So as an example, if I bring up these are really the utility areas. That's a continuous map. It's hard to see, hard to make sense of. And, it might appear on the top of the map and obscure other features. As an example, here's, it's blocking the other layers. I can use transparency, but I can also drag and drop the layer over here on the right and change the drawing order. Okay, yeah, and those are the utility service territories. They're only down to a county level, but that can help identify which utility or utilities are operating in an area. There's some border crossing data that we have here as well. Let's see what else. Yeah, let's look at a couple of these because there's some data sets of interest, I think, that are worth highlighting. This storage theme we added recently, battery energy storage and other types of storage on the grid are growing rapidly and are becoming pretty important as renewables are added to the grid. Since renewables vary in the amount of power they generate, this can be a way to balance that over time. Some of these are proportional symbols to show the overall size of the storage. So here, for example, is a pump storage system that has pretty large capacity. That's a really interesting data set in these times when energy storage is rapidly changing on the grid. Let's see, renewable energy as another example. Lots of layers in here. The shaded area on the map is really the direct normal irradiance of solar energy, and that takes into account climate as well. The cloud cover over time that's generated by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and helps show where solar would be more able to generate more power for a certain panel size. These two databases here are pretty notable in that they contain very detailed locational and technical data about wind and solar projects. So these red dots are actual physical locations of turbines, wind turbines, not just the wind farm. It's the turbines themselves. Here I can change the base map. And as we zoom in, we can see these physical features on the ground and how accurately they've been mapped. Here's a solar facility that's been identified. And if I click on these points, I can learn quite a bit about even the physical turbines, what model they are, what capacity, when they were installed, all these kind of things. And kind of similar for the solar database, Grazing Yak Solar, that's a good name. Yeah, here's a single axis type, a variety of characteristics there. All right. A few that have been added that are another one. Let me clear the table of contents. This little menu on the top right was just added. Allows you to clean up the table of contents quickly. I'll reset the map here. So if we go to the catalog now, let's find a few layers that way. So we have these land value layers generated by Boston University research. They vary between vacant land and all land as far as their inputs. And if you want to learn more about, what about this data set? Where did it come from? What is it? You can click that metadata link, and that will open either in another tab or in a separate window. But you can learn about all kinds of details about that particular data set. So every layer in GEM has metadata like that, and it's our best available information about the data that's in that layer. We can also download a copy of that data if we need it for our own purposes. And this data set, there's gaps on tribal land. They didn't map land value in tribal areas, so there's some gaps, but it gives you a very good view of the overall land value, and that might make a big difference for project location. Just to be aware, we have a federal lands layer. This does include some other land categories, but they're not mapped as completely. So the Western U.S. has a lot more federal land. These various shades are different agencies that administer those lands. So there might be some projects that are, for example, on Bureau of Land Management land or something. This layer can help you be aware of what jurisdiction you're looking at. It's probably enough on data content, but I recommend perusing the catalog to select different categories, and you can gauge quite a bit about the content rapidly if you use some filters or type some keywords for things you're interested in. That helps get a better sense of what's in the system pretty quickly. Okay, let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about this third element. So if I have an area or a linear corridor of interest, I can pick a report. Let's take jurisdictions, for example. And if I have some areas I've already put in the system, I can use them, but typically as you're getting started, you would need to enter some. So the simple starting way to do this would be to enter an analysis area. You click the draw mode. You can sketch on the map. As you sketch, you can, well, if I double click, I'll complete my area. I can scroll the mouse wheel as I'm working. I can also refine my sketch by hovering and adjusting it as I go until I'm satisfied with that area. And then I click done, and let's call it demo. I can select a color for it. And then if I want, I can, this is the footprint that'll be used for the report, but if I want, I can give a buffer around it. So let's say we're also interested in things within 3 miles around it. And I'll put demo for a subtitle as well. So that just appears at the top of the report if you give it a subtitle. Then you click Run Report and View. So then these reports appear in another tab. You might need to clear, you don't want to block pop-ups when you're using GEM because it'll block it from showing the report. This table of contents is clickable, so you can jump to certain sections if you like. The titles at the top describes the area used to generate it, and here's my subtitle. And again, the metadata. So under each table is the layer that was used to generate the data shown there, and the name of the layer is given. So say, oh, well, I'm interested in these jurisdictions, and I see they're coming from city boundaries in my report. I can come back to the system and either hit this layers button, well, here, and go after a layer that I see listed in the reports. Then I can click on features and learn about them. And that's actually, the identify tool is disabled when you have this panel open. So if you close it, then you could click on features and get the information. At least you should be able to. Sure what I did there. Okay. Let's see. Let's use clear the slate again. Okay, another way to come at it is to, if you have an area you've already got a file for, you can use this plus at the lower right. So I've worked with the system for quite a while, so I have a whole lot of areas and corridors and models that I've generated myself. This will start populating as you add your own. So here I'm going to add an area from a file. And I've got on my file system some ones that I've already made. So let's take this county in Texas. and load it. These files can have, it loads the first feature it finds, and there's some details about adding files, and there's a video on this tool that I'm demonstrating. So I'm going to kind of go through it quickly here, but same thing, assign a color, zoom to it when we're done. Also hit this again. All right, so this is a county in Texas that I previously had a file for, and I'm going to use that for a report. Let's say I'm interested in electric vehicles, and this will, I pick that report, and then I can select that area. Well, I have 2 demos, so hopefully this is the right one. This we'll find out. No, it isn't. Let me quickly switch. I'll clean it up a second. I can delete and manage these down here. So let's try that again. Okay, this one has quite a bit of content in it, and I won't go through all of it, but again, show kind of like the set of steps you would take as you work. So you may be interested in the charging stations, and they're divided by their kind of charging level, as well as whether they're a proprietary connection type or one that's more generic. And you can see more details about those at the bottom of the report, like the actual station names and their capacities. We have designated corridors. So those are corridors that have been defined for electric vehicles. And there's some registration data that show how much different types of EVs are being deployed in that county. This particular county doesn't have very many registered vehicles right now. So I might want to follow up and go to the transportation, take a look at some of those charging stations, corridors. So here's the registration data. So this allows me to, get deeper into what I found in the report, circle back to the layers, and use the map to help me learn about it. Okay, let me reset again. And now let's do something different. I have a model that I designed. I'm not going to get deep into the Find Suitable Areas tool today, but there are some recorded webinars about it, and I'll be talking about that in other examples in the future. But I've got a data center model that I ran already, and just to talk about it a little bit, here's the criteria in it that get at the different criteria that I felt that would be relevant for citing a new data center. And so it needs to be close to a fairly high capacity substation, because these systems require a lot of power. You can see surface water flow at the bottom, so that's an attempt to have cooling water in the vicinity or a really good source of water. We want to have a lot of capacity nearby. So here we're trying to be close to large power plants. We're looking for areas that are not especially expensive for land value. Just a whole set of criteria like that. So that I computed that previously, and that generated this overlay here. Let's go look at some corridors that plays into what I'm planning to talk about. These are some corridors that are out for public comment and being considered as possible places where there will be further analysis, and projects that might be cited in them could have a little bit faster siting analysis. Say I want to site my data center in an area that I found to be highly suitable based on all these criteria, and I want to learn more about that location and study it. So I can add an area, and let's make it in here somewhere. So that's kind of a place I want to study to see if I can place a data center in that region. And this is a very hypothetical example. I just want to emphasize that. Let's learn more about the power plants near it. And so we can go to choose a report, and there's a power plant report, and I'm going to pick it. And now I'm going to go out pretty far. So 50 miles around this area. I'd like to know what the capacity is in this region. So I'm going to run a report on that. And you can see that, we've got a total capacity of about 239 megawatts. Not real, there isn't especially a huge power plant nearby. There's renewable power plants. The general idea is that you can use these reports to learn about what's around your vicinity. If we hit edit report, we can keep the panel and make a change to it and run another report. So let's try protected areas and run that. So we can do a quick scan. Is there anything in the area that might be a concern? Some protected area that is not going to be very compatible to build my plant. I can scan that and see if there's any issues that can come into play. I might also display that on the map and see where some feature I find corresponds to that location. How is it nearby or is it right on top? And I could conceivably change my location or compare two locations following that kind of process. We're going to need power, so let's take a look at the nearby transmission lines and substations. And I'm kind of thinking of this in conjunction with this corridor. So my idea is wanting to connect over here. And so we can start by maybe sketching a potential route for a line to connect us in. So if I draw a new corridor, and I'm going to do a straight line.
As you're drawing that, Jim, there was a question in chat about drawing new corridors. Are you able to do that by entering GPS points to define the start and end points?
Not at this time. One way to do that, I think, would be to use the one of the text file entry types. Use a tool to put it into a file and then load it as a data file, as opposed to being able to enter the coordinates right in the tool. So that would be a thought on that. And I'd be happy to follow by email if you want to ask a more detailed question, and we can help you with I could potentially create a little file for you if you have some coordinates you want to test and show you that process. Okay, so we don't really know what's happening along that route very easily. We can load data and view it, but we have a modeling capability that can at least help, with potential routes. And it's already loaded with a whole set of criteria that help determine whether, there's some other features in there, like a steep slope or a stream to be crossed, that needs some special consideration. So we go to this generated corridor. I'm going to pick one of these models. So these you can view out of the mapping catalog if you want to take a look at them and how they're made. But these are just 3 strategies, and it's sort of initial capability. So say we want to, there's no transmission lines here, so that's not going to help us. But we might think that following some established right-of-ways like roads will help us find a route that's going to be viable. And I can pick those endpoints on the map. So I have my data center location here, and I have, a nearby transmission line. Well, actually, here's the substation, so let's connect to that. And I can click that and click generate. Now, that launched something. It's running on the server, and you can see a progress bar on the top right there. And it's going to jump a little bit because the steps aren't quite linear, so those are kind of different stages of the processing. So this one's going to take a little while before it comes back. And in the meantime, I'm going to run a report on this corridor, see what we can find along it. But as another topic, let's look at cultural resources and see if there's any historic sites or other areas where an issue might be raised by different stages of the planning project process. And let's see if there's anything within a couple miles of it. So this is kind of a screen for any gotchas, and it came up pretty empty. So We're not finding any cultural resources. It's not everything, but there's a lot of databases about cultural resources that we can tap into rapidly. So there might be some need to assess the route beyond that, but even so, we can judge that. All right. Another thing I might have done is if I have a proposed project, I might have that available. So, and let's make it 200-foot width and give it another color. So here's something I mapped previously as an idea for routing that. So there's several different ways that I could investigate different routes. And the one that's going to consider a lot of suitability factors is the one that's generating yet. Yeah, there it goes. And if I add major roads, because it was the wrong layer, I can see that the model generated a route that for the most part followed existing roads, major roads. But then when it got close to the substation, it veered off to make a more direct route to it. So there's a lot of ways that you can map a corridor that you might want to study. If you generate multiple corridors with different strategies, it can help show where there's a pinch point or an area where there's more flexibility in routing, where you could compare different paths and study those further. And then in the course of doing that, you can learn quite a bit about what your options are as you go forward. Let's try another example use case. You can reload the page as a quick way to reset everything as well. So another thing that I've got files already saved for, but you might collect is hurricane track. There's a lot of effects on infrastructure from hurricanes. Here we have Hurricane Helene from 2024, which made landfall in Florida. And I've got the forecast here. And these are from the National Hurricane Center. And what I wanted to do is demonstrate the file tool. The file tool lets you load your own GIS layers into GEM, and I'll explain the difference in a minute. So let's go back and pick that. Similar process. There we go. So that's the actual track forecast of the hurricane, and then use the file tool. And this is what I want to forecast radii. And I'm going to just make that kind of a light blue. I can change the drawing order. Point being, say this is a forecast for a hurricane that's located south of Cuba at the time of the forecast, but it's expected to come north and impact Florida. I can start taking a look at what infrastructure might be affected by that. So I can run those reports, but this is also something I can visualize and share with decision makers. If I wanted to quickly just make a map of the infrastructure, I'm going to adjust the transparency a little bit and zoom in. So this might be my area of concern, and I can spend some more time refining the map. I could use, polygon just to say, here's the area. It's kind of a redlining idea. Here's the area that we're most concerned about. And then I can use the print tool to share a quick map generated in the system. I'm still drawing here. So what that does is generate a snapshot of the map. So any content, whether it's the base map or graphic overlay or data content, will be included in that map, scale bar, and then the legend that is loaded will appear on the right. It's a fairly simple overlay, but it's a quick way to collect more permanent version or copy of what you're viewing on the map. You might want to save it as a PDF and keep it and email it, or you can also just send it to a printer. I wanted to explain the difference between the file tool and analysis areas a moment. The file tool was added really as a project review capability, and what it does is load various types of GIS files that a user might have and allow you to superimpose those on the map. It's really useful for viewing data that you have at hand that's not loaded in the system, and creating a map that you might print or just viewing it, see how it corresponds to data around it. One important aspect of the file tool is that it's only in your browser memory, so it's not stored anywhere or transmitted anywhere. If it's a more proprietary or pre-decisional type of thing, you can bring it in and look at it yourself and not transmit it or share it. When you quit GEM or reload the page, it's gone. In contrast, analysis areas can be loaded from files, but those are saved. When you run a report, those get transmitted to the server. We don't do anything with that, but there is information being transmitted. If you load something as an analysis area, you can view it on the map and make maps of it, but you can't do much more. Analysis areas only load the first feature out of a file. It's just intended to be a simple overlay. Those are some use cases I had in mind to show today. I didn't get deep into the modeling capability, but we'll be doing other webinars, and there's some previously recorded work that describe that, and it gets pretty involved. But I think that's a better topic for a separate webinar. And I'd just like to open it up for questions while you still have some time left, and I'll have the chat on the side here so I can see if there's any questions there.
We had a question in the chat about running an analysis report to find the age and energy output of wind turbines in a given area. And I think more generally, maybe asking if you can pick and choose the range of information you're getting out of a report when you do that in GEM, and can you compare multiple areas in a report?
Yeah, well, let's run one of those and just take a look in the report. So I don't recall if there's any, see, that would be the power plants report, I think. Yeah, the power plants report would include wind turbines from that database. And I'll just pick some arbitrary extent so we can get a report. That would be most likely here. So it has year operational, and it's just not formatted that well, but those are years. So in that sense, you would have the age of each turbine, and you'd have to compute an average, I guess. You can take these, you can select like that and copy and paste these into Excel, and they'll paste in with columns and rows set up and all that. So it's fairly easy to use this in another tool that way. And of course, you could run this report for multiple areas and compare it. I would say that would be the best approach for that particular question. It's pretty quick and easy for us to configure these reports or make adjustments to them. If there's one that you'd like to see another field in or just some change, reach out. And also keep in mind you can download these layers. There'll be GIS files, so for the most part you would need GIS software, but there are some exceptions where you can get at the database side of the files in Excel. And so you might be able to do quite a bit if you download it. And again, I can help guide you through that process by email if you ask. Welcome your feedback, and we'll be continuing to make a lot of updates and improvements to the tool over time. Check back every so often, you'll see some new things coming up in GEM. Have a good day.